Hello there, and welcome back to Yodo. I'm Dr. Sarah Bohn. The comments from a viewer regarding the admission process at an assisted living facility prompted me to provide today's information. The viewer was taken a little bit back about the amount of information needed and some of the questions asked, as well as the delivery of those questions during the admission process of a family member. They were a little bit startled regarding the questions for life-sustaining treatments. The questions had been given abruptly and in a nonchalant manner. I have heard these questions regarding code status being asked as directly as simply, are you a full code? You don't want to be a full code. You're a DNR. Are you a full code? So I've just overheard these conversations being very plain and really nonchalant in the past. In defense of the staff at the residential facility, they have considerable paperwork for the admission process, and they just want to get through that paperwork as quickly and as accurately as possible. The admission process is not the time to be making these important decisions. If the resident and family have not considered life-sustaining treatments, it can be quite unsettling to be asked these questions, but full code is the default. The default status for preference, if people haven't made that decision, is an automatic have everything done. There are numerous videos on this channel that relate to different life-sustaining treatments and discuss those potential outcomes from each one of those treatments, but you would need to talk to your specific care team, medical team, or specialist that's caring for you or for your loved one. Communication regarding outcomes and prognosis should be open, honest, and definitely held on a regular, ongoing basis, at least annually, but certainly after any acute event, hospitalization, or change in the person's health. For patients that do have specific requests regarding life-sustaining treatments that they do not want administered, each and every state has specific documentation requirements that must be completed to ensure that that patient has their end-of-life care wishes recorded and the appropriate physician orders in place that coincide with those wishes. Today we'll talk a little bit about assisted living facilities in general, how to know if you or your loved one is ready for that living environment, what that living environment can be like, the services that are provided, and we'll discuss a little bit of the information that's typically needed during the admission process. An assisted living facility provides full-time living arrangements in the least restrictive environment possible. That is, the most home-like environment for each of its residents. Assisted living facilities will not provide as much assistance as a nursing home, and they do not provide as much nursing care as a nursing home. In the state of Florida, there are varying licenses that allow for increasing levels of assistance and nursing care at assisted living facilities. I suspect other states would be similar, and I'm not going to go into the specifics of those varying licenses, but please be aware that every facility is legally able to provide some level of care, but not every level of care for every person. For individuals requiring a higher level of care, an assisted living facility may be required to decline their admission, as that facility may not have the appropriate staff or license to meet that person's needs. Sometimes the facility may need to inform the resident and their family that they're no longer a candidate to stay at a particular facility because their care needs have increased to the point that they can no longer meet those needs. Facilities have requirements that they must be able to meet and ensure a person's daily safety needs. This will include diet and nutrition, medication administration, mental health needs, ensuring that the individual's behaviors are not a risk for themselves or others, including the other residents as well as the staff of the facility. Typically, licenses in the state of Florida will require residents to be 65. However, many allow for residents much younger than that, and some licenses will allow for residents as young as 18. They must be free of communicable illness. They have a minimum ability to perform certain activities of daily living, such as needing only supervision, while other licenses may allow for their residents to have a lower skill level, needing minimal assistance, and some have a higher license level to allow for their residents that require a much higher level of care. Residents must have a documented disability or a skilled need to be in that facility, as stated by their attending clinician. An assisted living facility will provide room and board, typically rooms or small apartments that can be occupied individually or in a shared environment, such as a roommate or a couple. They have shared common areas for dining and recreation. An assisted living facility can vary from a very small home, providing an individual apartment for one person, to a large facility with several hundred residents. These facilities are required to provide certain services, such as meal preparation and snacks, with specific regulations regarding nutrition. Meal services and dietary requirements must meet and be updated on an ongoing basis by the facility, and documentation provided by the clinician of what that resident's needs are. Most facilities provide meals in a common area, but under some circumstances, many provide for the resident to have meals delivered to their room. Meals are closely monitored and heavily regulated for nutritional value, food temperature and timing, as well as across many other specific criteria. Menus need to be planned a week in advance and are to be conspicuously posted for the residents and have easily availability for the resident to review those menus. There can be no more than 14 hours between the end of dinner and the beginning of breakfast. If a resident does not have kitchen access, a snack must be offered at least once a day. Facilities in the state of Florida are required to have a 3-day supply of non-perishable food items to cover the needs of their entire census of their building. All regular and therapeutic diets have to be reviewed annually by a licensed or registered dietitian, and any substitutions have to have comparable nutritional value, and this has to be documented as well. Ensuring a person's medication is provided appropriately is another key function. Trained and licensed individuals do provide the patient's medication as prescribed by their clinician. They do not adjust those medications or doses, and they strictly follow that clinician's orders. Facilities will allow for some over-the-counter medications to be kept in a person's apartment for self-administration, but that circumstance also requires a physician order to allow for that independence and liberty. Plus, that facility must ensure that the other residents cannot gain access to those over-the-counter medications. So it goes without saying that having a medical group that attends to their residents in the home or that facility is a really large benefit for the resident, the family, as well as for that facility. Facilities are required to have an up-to-date, accurate order set that is readily available for review. Some ALF environments have medical teams that do visit the facilities. This service is most often billed through the resident's private medical insurance plan and not part of their monthly rent. Facilities are required to keep medications safe with an adequate supply and have properly updated medical orders that coincide with the medications being administered. These facilities are commonly evaluated to ensure that the basic needs and these requirements are being met. These facilities provide varying amounts of personal aid and care services for activities of daily living support, such as bathing, dressing, grooming, and some facilities provide assistance with ambulation and transfers. I would refer you to our Golden Hour video for more information. Some patients require assistance for safely transferring from a bed to a chair. Other patients may need assistance with personal mobility, and some will require assistance for toileting needs. The amount of assistance provided depends on the needs of the resident as well as the license that that facility holds, the training of the staff, and the needs of the resident. The lowest level of license requires that the resident be fully independent and able to seek egress in a situation such as an emergency or fire. Based on the license that the facility holds, some provide specialized health monitoring, mental health assistance, supervision for cognitively impaired residents, and many may offer unique activities and exercise for special populations. All of this can be found when looking at the various licenses that the facility holds and considering the needs of your loved one. Some are licensed to provide for a higher level of nursing care as well. Many facilities may allow for a resident to have a pet. If pets are allowed, it could be an additional charge though. Most facilities will assist with minor or mild skin care concerns, and there are a lot of specific definitions and regulations of what that means and how those skin needs are evaluated and cared for. The facilities will offer services such as housekeeping, laundry service, recreational activities, and even transportation services. These extra services are typically provided at an additional charge. The cost of these services, especially transportation, can vary considerably from facility to facility. This also depends on the level of care that the individual can provide for themselves and how much assistance they need from the staff. The amount of and mode of transportation varies considerably from facility to facility. Some may include transportation for certain recreational activities. Others might include transportation to and from their medical visits. But with Uber and Lyft companies pretty prolific now, it's commonplace for no extra transportation to be included. It's important to know what is included, and if not, what additional services are available and what are the cost of those extras. Housekeeping and laundry services also vary considerably. Sometimes families or friends live close and they prefer to take care of their own laundry service. For housekeeping responsibility, sometimes residents are still quite functional and they prefer to perform many of their own daily apartment chores. For recreational activities within facilities, this typically includes the 3 B's: bingo, birthdays, and Bible study, plus arts and crafts, story time, review of current and local events, board games, book club, computer classes, cooking, singing, dancing, and music appreciation, gardening, pet therapy, and puzzles are very common. Many facilities also offer other enrichment classes provided by local education services, parks and rec, and learning how to play an instrument is not uncommon. Field trips are offered, such as going to event festivals, museums, golf, fishing, eating out or picnics, and shopping. Those are really common. Many of the services that are offered can be added a la carte, but they may require an additional fee in addition to that monthly resident fee. Facilities will allow for home health agencies that will frequent through their building, and they can help with medications or antibiotic administration, evaluating and caring for diabetics, or blood pressure needs, or heart care, or edema needs, skin wounds. The home health agency can provide intermittent nursing services as well as a variety of therapy services. And so that's just like anybody else's private home. This is billed through the resident's private medical insurance. The orders for home health will come from the resident's personal physician and clinical group. Home health is not part of the assisted living facility provision. Home health has its own separate requirements. Hospice care is also allowed in the assisted living facilities, and sometimes the hospice agencies have very good relationships with those facilities because they provide a lot of extra care and nursing care as well as aid care for the residents of those facilities as they want to age in place. And we'll talk about that more in just a minute. Hospice goes to the place where the patient calls home, and if that's an assisted living facility, they provide that care in that facility in addition to what that person is already receiving from the facility and from their private physician. Again, that is also separately paid for and regulated. Insurance companies and Medicare have responded to the citizen request for safely aging in place, and that's what I was talking about just a moment ago. All these services are provided in the setting of this person's home, and they just need a little extra home care, a little extra assistance to live, maybe not completely independently, but certainly not needing full nursing home care. When the assisted living facility becomes that person's home, that's when home health or hospice may provide additional assistance in that facility setting. People have demanded to be able to age in place, and insurance companies and the government have responded accordingly. The cost of living in one of these facilities takes all of these multiple variables into consideration. Thus, you can see why it could be a very expensive option and why the monthly fee can vary quite widely, as it depends on so many factors. How much support does the person need? What are the locations and amenities of that facility? As well as how many of these extras does the person want and need? Keep in mind that over time, typically residents will require additional assistance, but they may be participating in fewer of the activities. Thus, the monthly fees and bills typically will change over time. How these services are paid for depends on the license of the facility as well. The facility may accept only private pay, yet sometimes insurance is accepted, and other facilities might even accept certain state or federal waivers for their fees, participating with various programs, or even participating with the Veterans Affairs. This is one of the many topics that you're going to need to cover in detail with that facility. The information required for a resident, at least in the state of Florida, is contained on the 1823 form. Each state has its own forms and regulations. That being said, many of them are going to require similar information, but the title of the form is probably going to be different. The form provides the personal and medical information for the resident. It's an accurate and up-to-date form that's required for each resident in that assisted living environment. In Florida, a licensed physician, physician assistant, or nurse practitioner has to complete that form. It's typically allowed for as early as 60 days prior to admission or must be provided within 30 days after the admission. But most facilities don't allow for as much latitude as that provided by the state law. They have much tighter internal requirements than what law specifies for. The form helps that facility determine if the resident is eligible to be admitted and to stay and be safely cared for within the restrictions and ability of that facility, what their license allows for them to care for. Facilities have their own intake personnel that are required to review all of this information and evaluate the individual requesting admission. The form will cover the individual's needs, the assistance that's required for safe living, medical history covering known conditions as well as medical observations. Current medication list and allergy list, including food allergies, is required. The person's mobility, function, and their care requirements is required. Probably one of the more shocking questions being asked during the admission process will be those about the patient's code status and their life-sustaining treatment choices. Again, this is definitely something that the staff needs to know, but it can be shocking to be asked. This will be reviewed with the opportunity to update and change on a regular basis. Updating this form is required periodically, for certain at admission, and then anytime there's been an acute change in condition, the 1823 or whatever state form your state requires is needed, as well as after every hospitalization. Again, it has to be filled out completely and accurately, and that's the responsibility of your healthcare team. To learn about the facilities that you're looking into, there are many online comparison applications that you can use. Most facilities have an online presence that you can use when you begin your search for information. You can find out what daily life is like in the facility. The government will also provide for comparison tools that are online to help you when you're looking at these different facilities. The tools will compare facility information, the number of beds, the number of rooms, the number of occupants of each room, languages spoken, activities offered, and usually some information regarding the payment forms that are accepted. You can also gather information about a facility, their specialty programs and services, either by calling them or reaching out to them in person. Some will offer audiology services or massage therapy, spa treatments, memory care, and many offer in-house restorative therapy, which is very different than physical therapy. Think of physical therapy and rehab as boot camp, and restorative is not quite so intense. You can learn about complaint history against the facility, sanctions, and deficiency data from many of the various inspectors of the facility and staff from these government sites. When visiting the facility, you might request to see their license. Certainly add to your list of questions that you're going to ask. If you have a concern or a complaint, what is the chain of command and how would you have your concern addressed? To whose attention do you bring it to first? Most new people learning about a facility are going to want to make at least one site visit to that facility. There are so many questions you're going to want to ask and things to consider before making your choice and changing the living environment. When you begin your quest to learn about facilities, sometimes this is done in haste, but please take a few minutes to make your list of detailed questions and then have several of those so that when you talk with each facility, you can fill the information out and you can make your own comparison. You're going to want to find out about basic payments for monthly rent, room, and board. What are the included services and extra charges for services? You want to list out which services are not included and what charges are associated with that. What is the current client mix and age? What is their policy for advance payment and how is that required? You're going to want to inquire about their bed hold policy. What if the resident is hospitalized? What are the terms of cancellation? What if someone moves away, requires a higher level of care, or passes away? What is the refund policy? Learn about their discharge policy, including how much notice they give you if your loved one is asked to move out. Ask to see the schedule of activities for the past 30 days or even longer. Inquire about staff training and staff turnover. Ask to have a copy of the contract that you could take with you to review and look at all of the fine print. It is a detailed and lengthy process when evaluating an assisted living facility for yourself or for a loved one. For certain, you're going to want to keep good notes and keep track of all of this information. Communicate with your healthcare professional and your healthcare team regarding the abilities, recommended, and needed support for yourself or for your loved one. In defense of the admission staff at these facilities, they have a lot on their plate when evaluating someone for admission. When completing these forms, they have so much information they have to collect that they're responsible for, and they're not really in a position to provide education regarding life-sustaining treatment choices, and certainly not equipped to discuss the implications and outcomes of those choices in detail. Their purpose is to obtain and document the information needed for admission and to evaluate your loved one and see if that's an appropriate environment for them. So it's easy to be shocked when being asked about these choices, but it's all part of that admission process. The default, remember, is for all interventions, but many patients and families choose to elect to not have all of those interventions. Studies are more commonly showing now that there are restrictions that people want to place on those life-sustaining treatments. Staff of the facilities must know how to respond during a crisis because they can't ask or make a phone call then. They just have to be able to respond. Don't have fear of not making a decision because the decision will be for full interventions to be provided until a decision is made. There are many other videos on this channel to help you make those decisions. So don't feel pressured. I hope this has been helpful, and if it has, I'm glad of it. If you'd like to have more information, please drop a comment below. I do have someone that I think I can probably get to be a guest speaker on the channel that can speak more directly to this if you would like to have more information. I recently met someone that has extensive experience with assisted living facility management, and if you have questions, I might be able to ask them to be a guest speaker. Thank you all for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate a thumbs up and the encouraging comments. This channel has grown, and I'm so happy with having such a kind and wonderful, caring community of people that are following this channel and leaving the great comments. For all of you with friends and relatives that were affected by Hurricane Helene, my heart and prayers go out to you. Florida is again preparing for Hurricane Milton as it makes its way through the Gulf of Mexico to the west coast of Florida. If you or a loved one is in the path of the next one, please stay safe. Bye now.